Welcome back, everybody, to the Metropolis Bulldogs Team Builder Dynasty here in NCAA Football 14. Today is the series finale, the final episode of this dynasty. Last episode, we had part 1 of the long-term sim in which we went over Season 6. A very successful season for us because we went undefeated and, of course, won the national championship in extremely exciting fashion, 34-31 against the Georgia Bulldogs, with 5 combined touchdowns being scored in the last 4.5 minutes. Our freshman quarterback, Rod Roberson, played out of his mind, throwing for 360 yards and 4 touchdowns, 3 of which, including the game winner, were caught by senior Jonathan Roberts. And we did all of this with pretty much no run game. D.D. Santander, our star running back, had only 6 yards the entire game, but we were still able to get the job done and finally win the elusive national championship. So today is the second part of the long-term sim, and the final part, in which we will be going over seasons 7, 8, and 9. 3 seasons in one video, so buckle in, get your popcorn now, because we've got a lot to go over today. I'm going to try to move as quickly and efficiently as possible while also being able to give you guys all the details throughout the season. So we're going to start with the offseason, transitioning out of year number 6 and going into year number 7 as we look to repeat and turn this team into an actual dynasty because, well, it is called dynasty mode after all. One championship isn't a dynasty. I will say it does look nice seeing that number 1 ranking next to our school's name, the first time we've ever been number 1 overall in a top 25 poll. So, of course, we have 3 more seasons we're going to get through today, starting with the offseason. We have 2 new coordinators, Casey Dunn, who was the previous offensive coordinator at Oklahoma State, and Rob Harley, who was the previous head coach at Houston. He ended up getting fired. As for our previous coordinators, Maurice Linguist is now the head coach at Ohio, and Paul Christ, the offensive coordinator, has gone to UCLA, where he will be the head coach of the Bruins. As for players leaving, we've got a long list of guys here. 4 players declaring, a number of other NFL draft picks as well. Most of the players leaving are getting drafted into the NFL. For our 4 players declaring, the list is headlined by junior running back D.D. Santander, who has been an unbelievable player for us these last 3 seasons. One of the most dominant players in school history, without a doubt. Would have loved to have seen what he could have done for his senior season, but I can't blame him, especially being a running back. Kyle Ward, Brian Slater, and Chandler Bednarik are also declaring for the draft. 3 key pieces on the defensive side of the ball who will certainly be missed. As for the seniors, here's defensive back Lewis Reed, our first-round pick in school history, and it really was a perfect choice for it to be him. Very well deserved. Kevin Bowman going in the 2nd round. He didn't get a single sack his junior year, which is odd, but okay. Marquez Glover, the kicker, goes in the 4th round. He won the Lou Groza Award as the best kicker in the country this year. Jonathan Roberts in round 5. What a story. We got him as a quarterback. He was going to be the starting QB for the future until he got injured, which ended up working out really well for all sides involved. That led to Manuel Castillo eventually being the QB. Roberts transitioned over to receiver, where he was great this year. Thiggy Yakabuti, 14 interceptions, the most in school history. He's been a great 4-year starter. Aaron Garrett's been a really solid backup tight end. Only 1 career touchdown, but it was an important one as a freshman. Final play of the regular season against Navy, one of the best plays in school history. Wade Ransom never really got a chance to start, but he did play a lot in the national championship game against Georgia, where he played really well. And then we've got a few notable players not getting picked, including Jared Martinez, Blake Wright, Marcus Sorvana, Cedric McNeil. C.L. Frost, I was very surprised to see go undrafted. I thought for sure he would get picked. All of these players will be added into the long-term sim for the Philadelphia Eagles franchise, so we'll be able to track how their NFL careers go along. Everybody goes into rounds they were expected to. Cedric McNeil ended up getting bumped into the 7th round, so good for him. He ended up getting drafted. No transfers, obviously, and that will bring us into the recruiting portion of the offseason. Recruiting is still very important. I think a lot of these guys could end up having pretty big roles with us. Recruiting this year is pretty easy. There's only one guy I really want. Defensive tackle Kenneth Hughes. We put a lot of points into him, and we got him along with running back Frank Fine and defensive end C.J. Moore. We only have 13 players on scholarship, but I think it is a pretty talented group of players. A lot of guys who I think will be able to contribute for us within the next few seasons. We ended up with the 3rd-ranked class in the country, 2 5-stars, 10 4-stars, and then a number of 3-stars and walk-ons there down the board. For the position changes stage of the offseason, we have a number of athletes on the roster, including Aaron Phillips. He was one of our insta-commits last year. He's going to play corner. And then Zach Powell. He's a big guy, 6'6", 240 pounds. He will play defensive end. I ended up making some other changes as well. Napoleon Abubakar goes all the way up to an 87 when being moved to defensive end, so I figured I would put him there for his senior season. He's mainly been playing defensive end anyway, so it doesn't really change a whole lot. Here is the progression stage. Still nobody to 99, although Rod Roberson will certainly hit that mark next year, assuming he doesn't declare for the draft. Even with losing upwards of a dozen players into the NFL, we've done a great job the past few seasons of recruiting, and some of those younger players who were depth pieces the past couple of seasons are now going to be important starters for our team going forward, so hopefully those guys will be able to step up, and the young guys who we've seen grow and develop are now the older players on the roster. For the cutting players stage, we ended up cutting most of our walk-ons. I opened up some extra roster spots because I'm pretty sure if you have extra roster spots available, it's more likely you'll have transfers come into your school. With me, I just never get transfers because I'm unlucky, but maybe we'll be lucky this year. I don't know. There's one more thing before we get into the season, and that is with custom conferences. We've been in the American Athletic the past 5 seasons. We were able to win a national championship in here, but obviously we're Power 5 caliber, so we are moving to the ACC along with Capital College. There won't be 16 teams in the ACC, though. Duke and Boston College will be swapping out with us, so they're going to be in the American Athletic, and us and Capital College have been promoted to the ACC. We're going to be a Power 5 school for the final 3 seasons of this series, and we've got a lot of good teams in our conference. Teams like North Carolina, Miami, Georgia Tech always becomes good in Dynasty mode. So that brings us to season number 7. We are here in the preseason for the redshirting player stage. Not overly eventful here. I ended up not redshirting a couple of true freshmen with kicker Nathan Landry, and actually he was the only one. I thought there might have been another one, but I guess not. Here is the depth chart for the season. Nothing too crazy for the most part. I really like where the team's at. There aren't any major position battles. There aren't any weak links on the roster. I think this team has what it takes to repeat. I'm not counting on it because now that we're a Power 5 school, we're going to be playing against better opponents. We're not going to have teams like UAB and UTSA on the schedule every year, unfortunately. So we're going to have at least 9 Power 5 games per season. So I think it'll take a year or two for us to really figure it out here in the ACC. But I think within the next couple of seasons, if all goes well, we can be a consistent national championship contender again. Or maybe we are just really good right off the bat this year. With our being our first year in the ACC, I didn't want a brutal out-of-conference schedule, so our 3 non-conference games are against Maryland, Kansas, and then Fresno State. We have a few ranked opponents on the schedule, and I'm pretty sure all of those teams are Power 5 minus Fresno State. So it's certainly going to be a challenging schedule. For recruiting, since we're a 6-star school, we've got a lot of guys interested in coming here. We recently unlocked the ability to insta-commit players, which is honestly one of the most satisfying things in this game. Getting someone to insta-commit, like right here with 5-star wide receiver Aaron Goss, is such a great feeling, not just because you have them committed, but you don't have to worry about getting that player, which essentially opens up a few additional players to end up committing to your school when it's all said and done. Other than that wide receiver Goss, we didn't get super lucky in terms of the rest of our insta-committing. We were able to get a 4-star corner in Will Broussard, who does look like a pretty good player. But other than that, we weren't able to get anybody else in that first stage. So now we're going to simulate through the first 6 games of the season. Hopefully we can start our ACC season off strong. We're going to simulate through week 8. So we're going to go up to, but not including, the Clemson game. So we're going to simulate past Wake Forest into week 9. We've got a couple ranked opponents here on the schedule with Georgia Tech and Miami, which could prove to be a challenge. The Georgia Tech game, we squeaked away, winning by 8. We were undefeated before that game. And that brings us to Miami. We're number 2. They're number 1. So long story short, pretty important game here. And Miami ended up getting the win, unfortunately. So we're not going to go undefeated once again this year. But we did win all the other games. We're 5-1. We're number 5 in the country. So if we win out, we could very well go back to the national championship game. Other than the Miami loss, we've gotten off to a great start this year, although we barely beat Wake Forest in overtime. Had a little bit of a scare there against the Demon Deacons. I would say the most notable storyline of the season is that Rod Roberson is a machine. 19 touchdowns to 1 interception. He is slinging it out there. He's having a phenomenal season here as a redshirt sophomore. So here's the schedule the rest of the way. We've got some tough opponents here. Syracuse and Louisville are both ranked. Capital College is a rival, so I want to take that game seriously as well. So we're going to simulate through the rest of the season. Hopefully we can win out, and we do. We're 11-1. We're the number 1 ranked team in the country. So if we can win the ACC championship, we could go back to the Natty, hopefully. Most of our wins were by a lot, but we barely beat Capital College. As for the Heisman watch, Rod Roberson is currently in 4th place. I don't think he's going to win it, but it's good to see him getting some recognition. And if he doesn't declare for the draft, maybe he'll win it in the future. So as I said, we're number 1. We've got a lot of teams in the ACC here with us. UNC is at number 9. They just lost. They were number 1. Miami is number 2. They are our opponent here in the ACC Championship. Herbie's rocking with the Canes. We played against Miami earlier in the season and lost. We were number 1 that game. They were number 2. Now it's been flip-flopped. The winner of this game is going to the national championship, and the loser will not. A couple of seasons ago, in year number 5 of this series, we beat Miami in the regular season, and Miami went on to win the national championship. Miami then beats us in the regular season 2 years later. Does that mean we're going to win the national championship this year? Well, if we wanted to, we got to win this game here at the Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina, home of the Carolina Panthers, for the ACC Championship between the Miami Hurricanes and the Metropolis Bulldogs, the number 1 and 2 teams in the nation, and the last 2 national champions as well. Miami won it in year 5. We won it last year in year 6. So it's kind of an important game, not just because these 2 teams are playing for a spot in the national championship, but these 2 teams have been the best 2 programs in the country over the past 2 seasons. Pretty close start. We're tied at 7-1. Neither side's really broken away. Miami adds a quick 10. We would respond with a touchdown. Miami back up by 10. They score another touchdown, and they lead by 17 going into the break. It's not looking good. Miami scores another touchdown. They lead by 18 points going into the 4th quarter. I don't think this one's going to happen. Miami scores another touchdown, and this game appears to be over. Our chances of going back-to-back are dead. The Miami Hurricanes win this one 48-20. So Miami beats us twice this season. Rod Roberson wasn't bad, but unfortunately he was unable to get the job done. I think the reason why the offense struggled is that we could not run the ball at all today. The run game really struggled, and the defense didn't make a lot of plays, only 1 sack, no interceptions. Miami's offense was just too good for us, so the Canes will go back to the national championship. We'll still get a New Year's Six Bowl, but it's not the same. Donald Ward, running back out of Oregon, wins the Heisman Trophy. Rod Roberson finishes in 3rd, and we will go to the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl to take on the Horned Frogs of Texas Christian University. So we are still going to get a New Year's Six bid, which is pretty exciting. Herbie's rocking with the Frogs. Why? I don't know. They're a B. We're an A+. We should win this game. Miami, as expected, going to the national championship, where they will go up against B- Air Force. We really could have played against a B- rated team had we won that ACC championship game. Unfortunate. So here we go at the University of Phoenix Stadium, home of the Arizona Cardinals, for the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl against the TCU Horned Frogs. We're looking to get a 3rd consecutive New Year's Six Bowl win. Again, it's not a national championship, but it is still pretty exciting nonetheless. We're definitely a better team on paper compared to TCU, so this is a game we should win. Hopefully our team doesn't come out flat. The opening quarter was pretty competitive. Both teams scored touchdowns, and right at the end of the quarter, we have a 4th and 1 at the 2, and we would punch it in. A quick score for Kyle Green, making it 14-7. We would add another touchdown, making it 21-7. TCU looking to score, they do, but then we would get a super long touchdown right before the break, and we lead by 14 going into the 3rd quarter, and the offense would just keep on moving. We lead by 21 now, late in the 3rd. It looks like we had this game won, and sure enough, our Metropolis Bulldogs will win the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl by the final score of 42-21. The offense played really well. The defense was able to hold their own, and it was enough to get us another New Year's Six Bowl win. Rod Roberson was pretty good. He completed less than 50% of his passes, but he did throw for 3 touchdowns. The run game, again, was pretty bad. I don't know what the deal is, because we ran the ball pretty well throughout the season, but I guess we really did miss Didi Santander. Nice game in the air for Shannon Dixon. He had over 100 yards. And then the defense was really good. 2 interceptions for Zion Hollis Sr., which ultimately was able to get us a Fiesta Bowl victory. Even though we didn't win the national championship, I would say this was a really successful first season in the ACC, going 12-2. We only lost to Miami, who obviously is a really good team. It's not like we lost to scrubs. And ultimately, Miami ended up winning the national championship, although Air Force kept it close. It was only a 1-point game, so shout out to the Falcons for making it competitive. We're going to finish the season 3rd in the top 25 behind, obviously, Miami, and Army is also ahead of us as well. Looking at these season stats, Rod Roberson with another great year. I think there's a very realistic shot he could declare for the NFL draft because he is that good. Kyle Green was our leading rusher. He had 19 touchdowns. Stephen Brown was hurt for a large chunk of the year, so that led to Green getting a lot of carries and a lot of opportunities to shine. Zach Fuller and Shannon Dixon, both over 1,000 yards. Kemi Emembenigba, the senior, was pretty close as well. The defense was pretty solid. Greg Washington led in sacks. 5 interceptions for Zion Hollis and 3 fumble forces for sophomore linebacker Ben Roberts. We did take in some hardware this year in terms of awards. Our center, Deion Cannon, won the Remington, and we had a number of other guys who finished pretty close as well. So we have been awarded a contract extension. It doesn't really matter since we're only going over 2 more seasons in the series, but yeah, why not? We're going to sign it. We have 69 wins, by the way, as the head coach here. Nice. So we have a new offensive coordinator once again, Jason Candle, who was the head coach at Arizona. He got fired and has been replaced by Justin Fuente. Casey Dunn, our previous offensive coordinator, is now going to be the head coach at Washington State. I think Washington State was in the top 5 at one point like 2 years ago, so that's something. As for the players leaving, not as long of a list as last season, but still a pretty talented group of players. Stephen Brown and Mike Davis are both going to be leaving early to enter the draft. 2 pretty talented offensive skill position players. We've done a really good job of recruiting skill position players the past couple of seasons, so I think we'll be okay. We are losing some talented seniors, including Shannon Dixon, Dallas Jones, Deion Cannon, and Giorgi Bucciarelli, all of whom have also been drafted into the NFL. Our list of undrafted players is really good as well. Nobody picked Napoleon Abubakar, which is a big surprise. I mean, a 6'8 freak like that off the edge, I feel like somebody had to have given him a chance with his freakish athleticism. Lionel Brothers and Kemi Emembenigba both went undrafted as well. They've both been really good 4-year starters. I feel like that's disrespectful to not have either of them get picked, but oh well. So we ended up getting about half a dozen players drafted. Not quite as long of a list as last year, but last year's team was better than this year, so I guess that does make sense. We haven't really talked about recruiting much this year. We have a pretty good class of players so far. Most of the guys here are athletes. I think at least 5 or 6 of them. And we still have our 15,000 points here for the offseason. So we're going to spread it pretty much evenly between these 4 players. Mark Fontenot, Demetrius Nash, Dwayne Miller, and Tim Dorsey. And we ultimately ended up going 2 for 4. We were able to get Dorsey and Miller, which were the 2 guys who I had pretty much at the top of my list. So if I were to get 2 players out of that group, it would be those 2. We barely lost out on Nash, only by 770, which is a little bit unfortunate. But still a really good recruiting class nonetheless. 14 players on scholarship. Pretty much all these guys are at least high 70s overalls. 4 5-stars and 5 4-stars. And then we've got a walk-on 1-star. Actually, a few walk-on 1-stars there at the bottom. I don't see them making the final roster. We have 6 athletes here. Randy Johnson's going to play wide receiver. He might play day 1 as a true freshman. John Johnson will also play receiver. Rodney Moss will be a linebacker. Carl Gibbs at running back. Chris Little will play quarterback. And Tim Goodman goes up from a 71 to an 80 at running back. We've got a couple other position changes. Tariq Stevenson is going to tight end. And now into training results. We finally have a 99 overall player, and it is quarterback Rod Roberson. No surprise here. We've been waiting to get a 99 on this team. We've had a few guys be really close. Manuel Castillo was a 96. Marquez Glover was a 98. But it finally happens here with the main man himself, Rod Roberson. I think this team is definitely better than last year's squad. We obviously lost a number of key seniors, but I think overall this roster is better than it was a year ago. So I do feel like we have a real opportunity to get back into the national championship if all things go well with our tough ACC schedule. The rankings committee clearly agrees we are the #1 team to start the year. All our true freshmen are being redshirted except for Randy Johnson, the southpaw himself. He is going to be a day one starter at wide receiver 4. I'm excited to see what the backfield looks like with Brady Jackson and Kyle Green being the main 2 guys this year. Rod Roberson is obviously a junior. He's got a really new look offense, a lot of new offensive linemen, some new receivers as well. So it might take some time for Roberson to adjust, but I think he'll be able to handle it. The defense for the most part is the same. We did lose a few players, but I think the defense is going to be really good this upcoming season with the majority of our key players being back for this upcoming season. As for the schedule for season number 8, we're starting the year at Happy Valley against Penn State. We also have UCLA with head coach Paul Chryst and Florida Atlantic. I decided to make the non-conference schedule a little bit harder now that we've had a year in the ACC. So we're going to simulate our first 6 weeks of the season through the Florida Atlantic matchup. And we ended up doing pretty well. We're 6-0. We started the year number 1. We haven't been number 1 the rest of the way until this week, where we have jumped back into the top spot. The rest of the college rankings are really weird. Purdue is at 2. Then we've got Georgia Tech. South Carolina is at 4. Their fullback is the favorite for the Heisman. And then Capital College is at number 5. Rod Roberson currently 4th in the Heisman watch, but I'm a little bit embarrassed that he's lower than a fullback. I mean, what are you going to do? South Carolina's playing like it's 1940s smash mouth football, and I guess it's working. We're scoring a lot of points. We've gotten at least 28 in every single game so far. We have 2 games over 56. So we're going to simulate the rest of the season. We've got a few ranked opponents here, including Capital College, who after a disappointing season last year is the number 5 team in the nation. So we're going to simulate up to the Capital College game. We are still number 1. We're still 11-0. We still haven't lost. And we're taking on number 4, 10-1 Capital College. Us being undefeated at this point is really impressive because the ACC conference as a whole is absolutely loaded. We're number 1. Georgia Tech is 3. Capital College is 4. North Carolina is at 8. This conference is so good that the defending champions, the Miami Hurricanes, are under 500, which is wild. So we're going to simulate through this Capital College game. Can we finish the year undefeated? Yes, we do, but barely. 49-46. What a close one. So now we're in the ACC Championship against number 2, 10-2, Georgia Tech. Wait till you see the top 25. It's kind of weird. We did beat Georgia Tech by 31 earlier in the season, albeit that was back in September. Look at the top 4. ACC, 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 ACC. Our conference is the top 4 teams in the league. 3 lost North Carolina doesn't have to play in the conference championship, and they will probably play the winner of this game. So us and Georgia Tech are being penalized for doing so well in the conference, yet you have 3 lost North Carolina who gets to sit back, relax, and probably play for a national championship. Maybe Capital College jumps North Carolina, but I doubt it because neither of those teams are, playing. So we've got to beat Georgia Tech here for a spot in the national championship. Even if we lose this game, we 100% should make it anyway. There's no shot 3 lost North Carolina should be able to jump us, especially considering we're playing in the conference championship and they're not. If Georgia Tech loses, then yeah, I could see UNC jumping them. We get off to a rough start. We were down 14-0 early in the first quarter, but from there we would really pick it up. Despite a poor first 5 or so minutes, we would actually take the lead after a late safety. From there, the offense is going to keep it going. We scored 2 touchdowns early in the third. We had another one late, and we were up by 24 points. 41 unanswered here for the Bulldogs as Georgia Tech scores another late touchdown, but it's not going to matter. We win this game 21-41. It started off really ugly, but thankfully we were able to make some noise there down the stretch after the first quarter, and it looks like we'll be playing for another national championship. Rod Roberson wasn't all that spectacular. I guess we ran the ball a lot, and it worked. I mean, we scored 41 points and won by 20. The defense was quite solid against a really good Georgia Tech offense, and we are going to finally win the ACC championship. We didn't do it last year, but we're able to do it this year. We're 13-0. We're number 1. We are headed to the national championship. The fullback out of South Carolina, Andy Tucker, does win the Heisman Trophy. Rod Roberson finishes in 4th. He also wins the O'Brien Award. Zach Fuller wins the Biletnikoff. Ben Roberts wins the Linebacker of the Year. And here we go, going to the national championship against the 9-3 North Carolina Tar Heels, who got to sit back and relax with 3 losses in conference championship week and waltz into the national championship game. That doesn't feel fair at all, But outside of the ACC, there haven't been any really elite teams throughout college football. So I guess we just have to pick the two best ACC teams, and I guess that might be North Carolina, who barely beat Bowling Green to start the year. This feels like David and Goliath, pretty similarly to 2 years ago in the national championship when we played against Georgia. We were the heavy underdog. We ended up winning. Today, North Carolina feels like the heavy underdog. They're a solid team led by junior quarterback Cole Caldwell, but this team is nowhere near as good as us. I know we had that big upset 2 years ago in the national championship against Georgia, so we know it's possible, but come on. North Carolina's 9-3. They barely outscore their opponents by more than 4 points. They're not that good. Most seasons, they'd be ranked like 15th, but because the ACC happens to be so good and the rest of college football happens to be that bad, UNC lucks into a national championship spot, and hopefully we'll be able to get the job done. I noticed during like the gameplay segments, the recording was super choppy, and I don't know why, so I apologize if the recording doesn't look great for the gameplay segments of the video. I didn't really notice it during my recording because most of this video was spent in the menus of the game, and the gameplay itself when I was playing it on my console was fine, but it's not going to look great, but it's only a couple plays, so it's not a huge deal. I wanted to play one drive on both sides of the ball just so, I could play a little bit in the national championship. On our first offensive drive of the game, we scored a touchdown with Rashard Brown Jr., and then the defense was ultimately able to get a stop here on 3rd and 13 as Webb only gains around 6 or 7. Again, I apologize about the recording. I just got some new recording software, and I don't know why it did that, but oh well. Still 7-0 after 1. We score a quick touchdown in the second quarter, and yeah, we are dominating this game as expected. North Carolina does not belong here in the national championship. The Tar Heels would make a nice little comeback here. They're going to bring it within 17 entering the fourth quarter, but this game looks like it's over. I think we're going to win ourselves our second national championship of the series, and that's exactly what's going to happen. We end up winning the game 40-27. North Carolina made the game close at the end, but ultimately this was a blowout. UNC never really deserved to be here, and we were able to win our second championship of the series, led by a very strong performance from quarterback Rod Roberson. We ran the ball pretty well. Rashard Brown Jr. had a great game in the air. Zach Fuller, the Biletnikoff winner, only caught one pass, but we still were able to have a really good day offensively. For UNC, their quarterback Cole Caldwell was okay. He threw 3 touchdowns, but he wasn't the most efficient. UNC did pretty good in the second half when the game was kind of already out of reach. So ultimately, it was clear we were the better team. We deserved to win this game. We were the best team in the country this year, and we have won our second national championship of this series, which is really exciting. So with one more season left to go, we are now a 2-time champion. Hopefully, we can make it 3. Junior quarterback Rod Roberson had another fantastic season, throwing for 44 touchdowns and just 5 interceptions. Kyle Green and Brady Jackson both had 1,200 yards on pretty much identical carries. Zach Fuller was great. We also had 2 other receivers in double digits in terms of touchdowns. The defense was really solid. The special teams was really solid. All around, this is the best team we have fielded so far in this series, in my opinion, and they are very deserving of winning this national championship. So now we go into our final offseason of the series. We're looking for one more championship. Can we do it? So first, we've got the players leaving and coaching changes stage. We have 2 new coordinators. Joe Smith is our new offensive coordinator, and Greg Schiano is our new defensive coordinator. Schiano was fired at Boise State. Smith was fired at Marshall. Our previous offensive coordinator, Jason Kendall, is the head coach at Western Kentucky, and Rob Hartley, the defensive coordinator, is now the head coach at Utah. So for the players leaving stage, we obviously did get a few players declaring for the draft early, along with a number of high draft picks as well. And unfortunately, center Dwayne Miller wants to transfer. I don't think he would have started this year, so it's not the end of the world, but a little bit unfortunate. So Dave Johnson, Rashard Brown Jr., Mafu Vea, and Nick Williams are all declaring, all really talented players. I think all of them probably would have been starters next year, so they are big losses. We had 4 players go in round 1, including Zach Fuller, a 2-year starter who was damn good in both of those seasons. Jamil Cox, Zion Hollis Sr., and Ellis Hill, all first-rounders as well. Prince Turk went in the second round. And then Chris Swanson going undrafted, which is a pretty big surprise. He certainly deserved to get picked. But I'm happy for everybody else who ended up getting drafted. We ended up with 4 first-rounders, by far the most in school history. We've only had 1 before that. We had the second-rounder, 3 guys in the 4th round, and then 1 7th-round pick. So for recruiting doesn't really matter too much because most of these guys would be redshirting this year anyway. We put points into 4 players, and unfortunately, we only got 1 in free safety, Lamar Hills, who was probably the guy I wanted the most anyway. And then we got another receiver down the board who we didn't put any points to, but we were still able to land. We have 23 players on scholarship. This recruiting class is insane. If I had just stopped recruiting after like week 8 and put everybody else who hadn't committed yet off the board, I think we still would have ended up with the number 1 class in the country. That's how good our recruiting class was really throughout the entire season. We ended up with 5 stars, a number of 4 stars. It's a shame we really won't get to see most of these guys progress because I think a lot of them had the chance of being really, really good. And I think these players could be the cornerstone after the Rod Roberson era, which I guess we'll never really see happen. The backup quarterback, Ryan Lawson, is a 99, so we have 2 99 QBs now. We are going to be losing a lot of players at certain positions. Wide receiver is super young. All of our starters are underclassmen. We have a lot of new starting defensive backs as well, particularly at corner. So wide receiver and corner, I think, are the 2 positions to really watch out for. Safety as well. We have a really young secondary and a really young group of receivers this year. As we look at the red shirts, we ended up not red shirting 4 guys, 2 of them because we didn't have a choice, and then the other 2 guys will be day 1 starters. So here is the depth chart for the 9th and final season of the series as we look for our 3rd national championship. Really talented group here once again. I think this roster is probably right on par with last year's team, maybe even a little bit better, especially if the young guys exceed expectations. So if we were able to win a national championship last year, there's no reason that we won't be able to do that again this year. For the custom schedule, we're going to start with Navy, then Iowa, and our other non-conference game is Oregon. I have not scheduled Maryland the last 2 seasons because they've been unavailable for us to schedule for whatever reason. We're going to simulate our first 6 games of the year right here. We have a national championship rematch against UNC. We ended up winning that game 44-21, and we are 6-0. We've been number 1 the entire season. We've had a few blowouts, including 37-0 against Pitt and 56-9 against Virginia Tech. I think the most interesting storyline this year has actually been the running back position. We've got 2 older guys there with Kyle Green and Brady Jackson. Jackson's been hurt for most of the year, so that has meant that Kyle Green has gotten a bulk of the touches, and he has took it and ran, quite literally. Kyle Green is currently the Heisman Trophy favorite with nearly 1,000 yards already and 13 touchdowns in just 6 games. Rod Roberson is not in the Heisman watch at the moment, but he is still having a fantastic season. We're going to simulate our last 6 games now. We've got a couple ranked opponents here with Clemson, and then at the end of the year against Capital College. With us really adjusting the ACC well, it's been fun to see Capital College also adjusting well. We would go undefeated in that stretch. We're 12-0 once again, going to the ACC Championship against 7-5 Virginia. I don't think we've played Virginia once yet. We had a lot of blowouts, although we barely beat Capital College, who lost their last, I think, 6 games, and they're 5-7. So as it stands now, if we win, we'll be in the national championship. Penn State, Alabama, Washington, and Georgia are the other teams currently in the top 5. And then running back Kyle Green is still the Heisman frontrunner, even with Brady Jackson coming back and getting a lot of those touches. Kyle Green is still having a fantastic season and is still the current leader for the Heisman. So as we go into this game here against the University of Virginia, they're 7-5. They're really not that good of a team. They're not ranked in the top 60 in any major statistical category. So in other words, how did they make it here? We should have no problems beating Virginia today and advancing to our 3rd straight national championship in the last 4 seasons. Senior quarterback Rod Roberson appears to be a team captain here at the coin toss, so that's pretty cool. Roberson here with his final 2 games of his career, the final 2 games of this series. If we win today, we will be in the national championship, and we should win this game. Virginia's really an unimpressive football team. We would start off pretty well early, up 14-0. The Cavaliers would answer with a late touchdown, and then they would get another one. Tied at 14-1, Virginia appears to be making this a game. Very competitive matchup as we would add another touchdown. We're up by 7. And that would be the score going into halftime. So we have the lead, but not by a lot. Virginia's playing it tough here. In the second half, Virginia would add a field goal. We would then add a touchdown. We're up by 10. We still have a pretty comfortable lead, but I'm not ready to say this game's over. Okay, now the game's over. We're up by 3 scores. We would add another touchdown and another one, winning this game 48-32. Virginia scored 2 touchdowns within the last minute, but it's not going to matter. The offense played outstanding in today's game, and then the defense was good, minus the final 2 minutes. Rod Roberson with another very strong performance, throwing 2 more touchdowns. Brady Jackson was the leading rusher, 140 yards and 4 touchdowns. Hopefully that doesn't stop Kyle Green from winning the Heisman Trophy. And then defensively, the defense, as I said, pretty good for most of the game. So we are going to be back-to-back ACC champions, and it looks like we're going back to the national championship game for a 3rd straight season. The question is, who will we face off against? Kyle Green finishes 2nd in the Heisman race, narrowly losing to Chuck Woods of Baylor. Very unfortunate. We've had so many players be so close to the Heisman Trophy on this channel throughout not just this Dynasty mode, but the ones in the past. And we've never been able to get somebody to win the Heisman, except for, I think, Alex Ellis in the Westlake Dynasty, who won it twice. We have a number of awards here, and as you can see, we will be in the national championship game, facing off against the number 2 ranked, 11-2, Crimson Tide of Alabama. So Penn State, who was number 2, ended up winning against Nebraska in the Big Ten Championship, but Alabama leapfrogged them despite having an extra loss. The Crimson Tide are a good team. They have one of our former recruiting targets in linebacker Enoch Bonto Gomolo. Their quarterback is junior Scott Carroll. This is a really solid team. It's not as good as the Nick Saban teams of the past, but still a very respectable opponent. I find it fitting that Alabama is the last team we're going to be playing against in this series, because when we entered college football, Alabama was the big dog. They were the model team. They always got all the talent. And now it feels like if we can win this game, if we can win 3 of the last 4 national championships, we will really become the new Alabama. Again, the gameplay is a little bit choppy. I apologize about that. I don't know what happened, but we're going to make it through. Since we didn't play most of this game, it's not necessarily a huge deal. We are the favorites coming into this matchup here against Alabama, but I don't want to undervalue the Crimson Tide because obviously they have a very storied history. We know that they show up often in these big national championship games, but it would be nice to go 3-0 all-time in national championships. The Bulldogs are undefeated so far in Natties. We won one in Season 6. We won one last year in Season 8, and we're looking to make it 3 for 4 in the long-term sim. So here we go, the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California, also the national championship, the final game ever in the Metropolis Bulldogs Team Builder Dynasty as we look for our 3rd national championship of the series. Again, I decided to play 1 drive on defense, then 1 drive on offense, and from there we're going to simulate the game. So Alabama opens up with the ball, 3rd and 6. Carroll looks to throw it here. He's going to scramble with it, and he's only going to get a yard. The sophomore Andrew King brings him down, so the Bulldogs get it. 3rd and 11. Roberson rolls out to the right, incomplete. So both defenses would start this game off with stops. Now we're going to simulate out here. Hopefully the Bulldogs can play well and take home the crown. We score a quick touchdown. We lead 7-0. Pretty good first quarter. We'll see if Alabama can get back on the board. They do, so we are tied at 7. This game continuing to be competitive. Very defensive battle as the Crimson Tide take the lead 14-7. We would add a late field goal, making it 14-10. Going into the 3rd quarter, we score a quick touchdown. We take the lead. We add another touchdown, and we're up by 10. Big 3rd quarter here for the Bulldogs. Now it's time to finish it off. We now lead by 17. Big interception in the red zone by Will Broussard. We would not score. Alabama adds a touchdown. They bring it within 10. Then we fumble it. Alabama brings it within 3. We are choking, quite literally. This is like the Super Bowl in the Eagle series against the Colts all over again. All we got to do here is get a first down, make Alabama use their final timeout, and that's exactly what happens. The tight end, Marcus Wheeler, brings it inside the 10, so that should end it, but there's one problem. After kneeling the clock out, it's 4th and goal. The game clock is ahead of the play clock, so we have to run one more snap, and we're just going to go for it. We could just run backwards and dive, but we want to get this touchdown. Final play of the series. Roberson dives into the end zone for a touchdown. What a way to end the Metropolis Bulldogs Team Builder Dynasty with a rushing touchdown from Rod Roberson to help us win our 3rd national championship game of the series. We take it home 28-38 against the Crimson Tide. What a game, what a team, what a ride, but we have done it. We have won another national championship. Senior quarterback Rod Roberson, now a 3-time champion. He played very well in this game, 338 yards and 2 touchdowns. We didn't run the ball all that well. Our Heisman candidate Kyle Green actually kind of struggled a little bit, but the rest of the team was able to play well. The defense was pretty solid for the most part throughout. Big interception in the 4th quarter by Will Broussard, and we were able to get the job done. Alabama made it tough for us, but we were able to beat off the previous kings of college football. This feels like a passing of the torch. Alabama is no longer the big dog, and now that is us. We've won back-to-back national championships. We've won 3 in our 4-year long-term simulation. Pretty good mark. We've only lost 2 games in the entire long-term sim. Not too bad. Let's take a look at the stats here for Season 9. A great senior year from Rod Roberson. Undoubtedly the greatest Metropolis Bulldog ever. Kyle Green with a phenomenal year. Shannon Top Gun with 13 touchdowns and over 1,000 yards. Ben Roberts was great once again. And then the rest of the defense was really solid too. We took home plenty of hardware this year. Rod Roberson won some awards. Obviously, Kyle Green took home some awards as well. Shannon Gunn, Greg Washington, and Ben Roberts also took some awards home as well. So there you go, 9 seasons in the books. I think before we wrap this up, I do want to give a proper conclusion to what has been a really fun series here with the Metropolis Bulldogs. We had a great 9-year stretch here, winning 3 national championships. And in this long-term sim, we only lost 2 games. I feel like this team was really defined by 2 eras. We had year 1, where we sucked. And then we had the next 4 years, the Manuel Castillo era, where we really built our program for success. 2 8-5 seasons. Then we went 11-3 and 13-1, winning American Athletic Conference championships both years. And then the last 4 years, the Rod Roberson era. We only lost 2 games during that entire stretch. We won 3 national championships. We won 3 conference championships. And we have turned ourselves into a legitimate dynasty. Here are all the players leaving. We've got a long list of them. Many of these guys are declaring. And then we've got a lot of seniors leaving as well. Some key pieces throughout this long-term sim. Guys like Ben Roberts, who won multiple Best Linebacker of the Year awards. Steve Watkins has been a 4-year starter during the long-term sim. Guys like James Ross, Dustin Mack, Marcus Wheeler, who have also been really good as well. Younger guys who are declaring for the draft early. Greg Washington's been great. Brady Jackson's been great. All of these guys have been really good, but the player we really have to give our flowers to is quarterback Rod Roberson, who I think, when it's all said and done, is, dare I say, the greatest college football player ever. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. 15,000 passing yards, an interception to touchdown ratio of 6-1, a career QB rating of 171, 65% of his passes completed, and of course, 3 national championship titles, and he only lost 2 games in his entire career, both as a sophomore, both against Miami. When we had gotten Roberson, I didn't think he was going to be that great of a passer. I wanted to turn our offense into more of an option-styled offense, but when I saw Roberson throwing the ball really well as a freshman, I quickly realized we need to design it around him throwing the football, and obviously that has paid off in a major way as he has turned into an absolute superstar. We'll be following his career along with all of those guys during the long-term sim of our Eagles franchise on Madden 22. So that's going to wrap up the episode, and that'll wrap up the series. It has certainly been a different experience with this series because most franchises I do last somewhere between 80 to 100 episodes. We get through 5 to 6 seasons, and then we have our long-term sim. That wasn't the case here at the Metropolis Bulldogs. So this series only lasted 39 episodes, but we went through the same amount of stuff that we would in a normal series. We just packed more into each episode. This series was also a lot different than the last Team Builder Dynasty series I had, which of course was with the Westlake Hornets. That series lasted over 270 episodes, and if I learned one thing about the Westlake series, don't have 270 episode series. So it was fun to have a different style and a different change of pace with this series, and I really enjoyed it. I think the one mistake I made was that I started it too late. I think if I had started it a couple months earlier than I did, we could have gotten through a little bit more. But ultimately, I'm really happy with how this series turned out. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I have. I'm really excited about the new NCAA series that I'm going to be planning pretty soon. Keep your eyes open on details. That will be spread out through the next week or so. It's a series that nobody's ever done on YouTube before. There's nothing ever like it. So I'm excited for you guys to see what I have planned next. Hope everybody enjoyed. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. For the final time in the Metropolis Bulldogs Team Builder Dynasty here on NCAA Football 14. Peace out. Go Dogs.